This is Will. He was born in 1926 in a beautiful small village in the north of Germany called Steinhude, and he lived there all his life. Will was a carpenter, and so was his father, who was also called Will. This Will is my grandfather. Now, this is Will's son, my father. He's also called, you can already guess, right, Will. And he also still lives in this beautiful village of Steinhude. But my father didn't follow into his father's or his grandfather's footsteps, and he did not become a carpenter. There was some change. My father was actually the first one in our family to ever receive higher education, and he became a middle school teacher. This is me. I'm not called Will. I'm also not living in Steinhude anymore. But most importantly, compared to my father's and even more to my grandfather's times, the working world had changed a lot. When I graduated from high school, there was an explosion of opportunities for me. I could go and do an apprenticeship, or I could go and study one of the many degrees out there. Did you guys know that right now, in Germany alone, you can study 19,000 different degrees? 19,000 in Germany alone. And I could also go and study abroad, and I could find work abroad. So here are a few of the things I ended up doing. I worked in China, Myanmar, Cambodia, the United States, Australia, and different European countries in the innovation and education sector with large international organizations, big companies, and startups. And I also did a lot in the online world. So while what my granddad did was still very tangible, building windows, tables, and shelves, my father had already become more of a knowledge worker, and what I'm doing now is even more abstract. My granddad had one job. My father worked in two. I'm not even 30 yet, and I have already lost count. So the working world has become much more dynamic, flexible, complex. Let's look into the future. What will it look like for my kids? I don't have any yet, and hopefully they won't look like this. But we already know today that 65% of the kids that enter school will work in jobs that do not even exist yet. 65% of them. We don't know exactly what they will be doing. Now you might be thinking, Rona, change has always existed. And you're right. So, what is different today? Through the digital transformation and new technologies, change has become much more radical, and innovation spans much shorter. You might have also read one of these recent studies on AI and robots, and how they will already, in the very near future, fundamentally transform what we work and how we work. And you just heard how new technologies do not only have an impact on transportation, but even on our milkshake consumption, right? So a lot of things are impacted by small changes, and we will, in the future, continue to see change at an accelerated pace in a more radical way. How do we prepare for that? You might be thinking, some of you, schools and universities. But unfortunately, most schools and universities, they were not designed for this rapidly changing society with a lot of uncertainties, where we don't even really know what we end up doing. They still prepare us for a set world and a set career path through information delivery. Most schools do. Unfortunately, in the future, we need different skills. We need more people that are creative thinkers, lifelong learners, that can handle all this constant change and uncertainty. So what can we do ourselves? That's what I want to talk to you about today, the future with a lot of changes and our own preparation for it. I guess I myself have always been pretty fascinated by change, which is probably also one of the main reasons why I decided to go to China after graduating from high school. Because what more of a change could there be from a tiny, beautiful, calm German village? You guys remember Steinhude, yeah? This is what it actually looks like. Beautiful village by the lake. Who hasn't been, go there. To the capital of China. To big, buzzing Beijing, with skyscrapers and flashing lights and millions of people. So after I graduated, a few weeks later, I found myself in China, in Beijing, where I studied some Chinese. And then I was actually sent by the organization I went with to another small village, to a Chinese small village called Qingtai. Qingtai has 1.5 million inhabitants, like small Chinese villages do, but it was still a small village, and I was teaching English there, sometimes up to 90 kids in a classroom. And yeah, of course, as you can imagine, everything was very different. From the culture, the language, the food, I still couldn't really write and read and communicate. And I felt, even though there were 1.5 million people in that village, very lonely. And there was the internet 10 years ago, but it was not like today. So no smartphones, and communicating with home was also not that easy. And there came this day, the 19th of September 2009. This is the headline of my original diary entry from that day. Some of you will be understanding my cool German youth language I'm writing there. And I've actually brought you this entry, and I've translated parts of it for you. So today is the 19th of September 2009, and today is a terrible day. 6 weeks are almost over, and time is passing. But I'm just missing everything back home so much. Everything still feels so different here, and I don't have a routine. Even though I'm trying to give my best every day at work, I actually just want to be back home and eat my mom's mashed potatoes. Today I was teaching English for 4 hours, each time with a big fat knot in my throat, ready to just start crying at any point. I just want all this to be over and be in a plane back home. So I remember writing that entry that day and thinking, I have 2 options now. Either I go home or I go all in. And I knew that if I would go home, I would miss this opportunity to learn, develop, and grow, and tackle the change. And I really wanted to be brave as well. So I decided to go all in. I got really close with some of my Chinese coworkers and some of my Chinese neighbors who helped me a lot to learn the language, learn about the culture. And I also had this new mantra that I put up in my bedroom, on my bedroom wall. And that was, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? So whenever there was a situation I was afraid of, because it was different, because, yeah, it was just such a change to me, it was an unknown situation, I tried to particularly go for that situation. Like this, I ended up staying in China, and I ended up on a journey around the world, because pretty much always when there was a new situation, a new job offer, 2 opportunities, I thought, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then I tried to go for that anyway, despite my fear. Like this, I ended up on a journey around the world, living and working in 8 different countries, and eventually I only returned to Germany 8 years later, and then Germany felt very different to me. But it's another story. So during my time abroad, I learned a lot of things, but I think there were 2 particular lessons that are very interesting for the future. One, I had to develop a constant openness towards change and new challenges. And secondly, I got excited about it. I got excited to try and learn and develop. And I understood that I could even do things I was initially afraid of. And I think that's important for the future, that we develop an openness for change and that we get excited to learn and that we understand that we have the ability to always learn and grow. And when I'm working in universities now, and young people graduate, and they say to me, thank God, Rona, it's over. I don't have to learn anymore. Maybe some of you here, you recognize this? You felt the same at some point? No, some shake their heads, some not. That really breaks my heart, because our ability to learn is the key to thrive in the future. And now you might be thinking, really, Rona? Lifelong learning? That's what you brought us here today? Another buzzword on a TED stage? I would like you to meet Carol. I lived with Carol a few years ago when I lived in New York City. I was 25 at the time. Carol was 72. And Carol was just such an inspiration to me. She was always on the go, trying new things, attending events, learning about new stuff. She always knew about the latest tech trends, and she also had always 3 young people living with her. At the time, I was one of them, to stay in touch with younger generations, even though it was usually Carol who knew about all the latest trends and could never understand that we didn't know about these things. So Carol, for me, really became the role model of a lifelong learner. Never lost her eagerness to learn, never lost her curiosity. How can we become more like Carol? Tonight, I really wanted to bring you some tangible things on this TED stage that you can implement right after these talks tonight. And so learning means to venture out. And this often means to leave our comfort zone. Let us start by understanding where our comfort zone lies. I have brought you mine. So this is not another stage act, but my comfort zone. And here, in my comfort zone, I feel safe and at ease. This is Steinhude for me. Now, if I want to learn how to handle change, I have to step out of my comfort zone into my courage, curiosity, learning zone. And now, I've brought you 3 things you can do here in your courage zone. Number 1 is super easy, and you can even do it at home. And that is, I would like to encourage you to have a look at new technologies and the incredible access to information they provide. Have a look at massive open online courses, YouTube videos, podcasts, online communities to exchange with, and invest, and if it's as little as 20 to 30 minutes a week, in a new topic you explore online to spark your curiosity and make your first steps towards becoming a lifelong learner like Carol. Now, the second step takes this online learning into the real world, and that is events. I would like to recommend to you, once a month, go to an event that has nothing to do with your current work or study bubble, and next challenge, go there by yourself. I know, can feel a bit uncomfortable in the beginning because we're used to being surrounded by people we already know, with topics we already know, but you will see how this broadens your horizon, how you learn to ask questions, and how you also get comfortable with not always knowing everything. And that's also a great skill for the future. And now the third thing, last but not least, needs a bit more time and commitment, and that is mentoring. Very passionate about this. I do it a lot with the companies I work because I think we underestimate the power of mentoring. And I actually learned about the importance, or the concept, first of all, of mentoring when I lived in Australia with Priyani. Sun always shines in Australia I couldn't find a picture without sunglasses, but Priyani, a credible young woman, at the time she had just started her engineering career, and she had a mentor at work. And at first I was a bit confused with this, because I didn't really know this concept of mentorship from Germany, but I soon understood how much encouragement and guidance it gave to Priyani, and how she and her mentor were learning a lot from each other. And that really inspired me to also become a mentor, be a mentee. And I would really like to encourage you also to find someone to mentor or to become a mentee, and find someone that is different from you. Different age, different gender, different cultural background. And be open to the insights you two have for each other, and become a teacher and be a student all your life. So my 3 recommendations for you out here in your courage zone. This is massive courage zone for me right now up here. So in your courage zone, number 1, learn new things online, explore new topics online. Take that learning into the real world. Go to events that are out of your usual work and study, and grow your courage and your network. And finally, be a mentor, become a mentee, and find someone to share your knowledge with and to learn with. And I hope that these things out here will spark your curiosity, challenge you, and you start to become a passionate lifelong learner, like Carol. But there's something else that is important, and that is often overlooked. And that is the comfort zone. I think in times of rapid change, it is super important that we take care of our comfort zones. And I would like to encourage you to make your comfort zone your caring zone, where you actively take care of yourself. I think it's important that we, when everything is changing so fast around us, make an effort to strengthen ourselves. And I have also brought you 3 quick caring tools. And number 1 is to create safe spaces for yourself. May it be through yoga or meditation or morning routine in which you just take time for yourself. I, for example, learned how to practice meditation when I lived in Asia. I was in a silent monastery for quite some time. And I really tried to implement this into my daily routine. And I would like to encourage all of you here tonight to find something that creates a calm moment with this everyday pace. And that leads me to my second recommendation, and that is nature. Especially if you live in a big city like Berlin, get out into nature. Go into the forest, breathe the fresh air, go to a lake and just look out on the water, and really just enjoy being surrounded by nature. Don't listen to another self-enhancing podcast, just be. Research even shows that time in nature restores our brain function. So make getting out into nature part of your weekly or monthly routine. And finally, reflection. I think that in times when things are moving so fast, it is very important that we take time to reflect. And I would like to recommend to make it tangible. For example, through journaling. Reflection enables us to critically evaluate what is happening around us. And of course, not all change is always just great, so it's important that we actively reflect and that we also consider how our own behavior impacts on the changes and how we want to shape it. And actually, I want to point out how I wrote this 10 years ago, and it's the perfect TED colors, yeah? I'm amazed by this. But reflection. So my 3 recommendations for you here in your caring zone: create calm spaces for yourself, go out into nature, especially if you live in a big city, and take time to actively reflect. I like to think of this as the safe harbor where you go to refuel and strengthen yourself to then step back out into the courage zone for all the challenges and new learning and developments. This is a picture of my granddad, my grandma, and me. And it's actually one of the few pictures I have with my granddad because he passed away when I was only 9 months old in 1990. When I prepared this talk, I was wondering a lot about what he would say about all these changes and what his approach to handling it would be. I guess there are 2 ways to grow old. One is that you think you know it all, and back in the days, everything was better. And the second is that you stay curious, continue learning, and actively shape the future. I believe in times of rapid change, it is more important than ever that we do not lose our love for learning. We still have a lot of challenges to tackle out there. And I'm convinced that with a learning mindset, we can become shapers of the future. So let's go out into our courage zones, challenge ourselves, explore, develop, learn, and actively shape the change in a way we would like to see it. And don't forget to take care of yourself. Thank you.